Morning. Good morning. How's all right. Well, today we are starting the last of the three books we were studying this summer, Song of Songs. So we're going to be learning about the courtship of the lovers in Song of Songs, chapter 1 through chapter 5, verse 1. And that's one of those weird places they put a chapter break where they shouldn't have. But let's just go over a bit about Song of Songs. So, according to 1 Kings 4:32, King Solomon composed 1,005 songs, and this is probably one of them. There's a lot of internal evidence of this. The style of poetry, for instance, we found in a lot of Egyptian poetry from the 1300s to 1000 BC, and it is in a very similar style to that. And there's also some place names that kind of put it in the United Kingdom period, plus just the description of the wealth that Solomon has would be in the United Kingdom period and not the split monarchy. So that's another good indication that it probably was written by Solomon, as tradition says. There is a minority view that thinks a woman actually wrote it, because the poem is actually takes the bride's point of view, and it's written from her perspective, and it talks about, it uses a lot of female metaphors for sexuality instead of male metaphors for sexuality that you see in other parts of the Bible. But either way, whereas Solomon's other songs no doubt covered a wide range of topics, this one is about love's subtlety and mystery, its beauty and pleasure, its captivation and enchantment, and its elusiveness and spontaneity. Song of Song portrays the power of love has a strength to rival death. God intends powerful love to be a hallmark of the marital relationship between man and woman. For millennia, Christian and Jewish theologians have held the book in high esteem. In fact, the Jews read Song of Songs every year at Passover. It is their tradition. They have 5 feasts that they read one specific book at, and for Passover it is Song of Songs. In fact, a rabbi, I'm sorry, I should have wrote his name down, but in 135 AD, he called the Song of Songs the Holy of Holies. So yes, the Jews held this book in high regard. However, no book in the Bible is subject to more interpretation. Some have taken it not as a story between two historical figures, but as a symbolic characters representing God's relationship to Israel for Jewish theologians, or Christ's relationship with the church. Others see it as typological. The characters are real and represent the allegorical view at the same time. The other way to take it is at the face value that this is a book in the Bible to receive God's statement on romantic love. And that is what we're going to be teaching this week. And I'm going to, for 2 reasons. Allegory is a style of genre that was invented by Greek pagans because they were embarrassed about the acts of their gods. They heard all these mythologies, and you had these thinkers like Plato and Aristotle and Socrates, and they do not like how embarrassing the stories of their gods are. So they created allegories to explain that away. And I think that is what a lot of Jewish and Christian theologians have done with this book, because they are embarrassed that it is a book about sex and marriage and love. And they like to say it as Christ's relationship with us, but this book has sexual language in it that would not be appropriate for our relationship with Christ. I know Christ is as our bridegroom, but it's that sort of protective love, that sacrificial love, not the physical love that is part of marriage. And this book deals with that. So as I said, it's from this viewpoint that we shall study Song of Songs as a story between King Solomon and one of his wives, perhaps his first wife, perhaps the wife he really loved, or perhaps this is a fictional story to tell his view on love and marriage. So either way, it is beautiful and marvelous when, romantic love is a good thing. It is beautiful and marvelous when expressed in its proper bounds of marriage between a man and a woman. So here's the plot and characters. There's no real clear plot in Song of Songs. Some interpret it as a love triangle between a beautiful peasant girl, a shepherd she's in love with, but then she's forced to join King Solomon's harem. I disagree with that after really studying the text. Well, there is some ambiguity in the text, but a more general interpretation is this is a poem about the love between King Solomon and one of his wives, not as the historical view. You can go back to the early church fathers, and that's their view they had on Song of Songs. That's what the Jewish rabbis have had about Song of Songs. This love triangle stuff is a much more modern idea. And there's also ideas that it is a leftover cultic text from when Israel was pagan, and it's a sort of a, it's Yahweh and Asheroth coming together, and then they got rebranded. But that is a very minority view on it. Plus, the book doesn't read like the sort of symbolic god matings that you see in other pagan mythologies. This is not about the sky and the earth coming together to create life. This is just a story about a man and a woman in love. All right. So the poem is clustered into 5 meetings in which the lovers pass through courtship, their wedding, the consummation of their love and their marriage, and actions after the marriage in which they renew their love. There are 3 sources of speech in the poem: the bride, her groom, and her attendants. Though her name is never mentioned, the bride is identified as a Shulamite woman in chapter 6, verse 13. It is unclear if this is the place of her birth in Shunem in Galilee, her actual name, which may be a feminine form of Solomon, or may derive from Hebrew for peaceful one, or a reference to a pagan fertility goddess. She was probably a peasant girl based on chapter 1, verse 6. The young maidens who are the bride's friends may be the other wives of Solomon, though they just may be onlookers in the city of Jerusalem. Their role is to ask questions of the bride or answer her questions. The last main character is King Solomon, and we are given glimpses of his wealth and pageantry. Though he had many wives and concubines, he expressed great love and admiration for his beloved. So, our objectives today is explore how the Song of Songs portrays romantic love and marriage, desire to be pure and self-disciplined in the way we express our love as God would have us, and discover some of the characteristics of loving relationships. So, let us begin with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time to study this book, and just let us understand the mysteries of love and its place in your creation, Lord. And just let us be mindful of these lessons, Lord, as we go out into the world, and in your name, amen. All right. The praise of love, the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. So, again, Song of Songs is that way the Hebrews do superlative. So this is the greatest song of Solomon. We have a couple of his psalms, and this out of the 1,005 he wrote. So this one must have been very, very good. So as you see, it has headers that breaks up who's talking. So we start with, she is the bride. Let him kiss me with kisses of his mouth, for your love is better than wine. And of course, wine is associated with intimacy and celebration to ancient Israelites. And also notice that this poem shifts from, third person there to second person. So she's talking first about him with the him, but then she's addressing him directly. And most of the poem is in second person. Your anointing oils are fragrant. Your name is oil poured out. Therefore, virgins love you. And there's a pun there in the Hebrew with name and oil, because name is Shem and oil is Shemen. So there's some wordplay going on there. Plus, it also is hinting that his name is a very great and powerful name, another reference to the fact he is King Solomon. And that's why, again, all the virgins love him, because he is the king, and, young women are always, daydreaming about, a king that can sweep them off their feet, right? So draw me after you, let us run. The king has brought me into his chambers, and I don't think the ESV translates that better. It's more like, let the king bring me into his chambers, as if she's wanting to go to him, as opposed to him summoning her to his chambers. So this is just her desire to be intimate with Solomon as they're in the start of their courtship. So others, the chorus, we will exult and rejoice in you. We will extol your love more than wine. Rightly do they love you. So if you've ever seen ancient plays, they have the choruses off to the side that sort of sing at certain parts. That's kind of what's going on here. I think this would actually make a really interesting play, just for that. As we'll see in the next verse, though, their words here seem to make the bride self-conscious, because she says, I am very dark but lovely, O daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon. So the Kedar were a Bedouin people that were the most dominant of their tribe in the first millennial BC, and they had tents of dark goat hair. So she's just, saying that she's worked, as we see in the next line, she's been working out in the sun all day, and she's very tan. And the curtains of Solomon must be very fine, but they must also be dark. That's what we can sort of draw from that. Do not gaze at me because I am dark, because the sun has looked upon me. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me keeper of the vineyards, but my own vineyard I have not kept. So her own vineyard is her body. She's basically been forced to work outdoors. She doesn't think she's as pretty as the daughters of Jerusalem that get to stay indoors all the day, right? So like many young women, she's self-conscious of her beauty. Tell me, you whom my soul loves, where you pasture your flock, where you make it lie down at noon. For why should I be like one who veils herself beside the flocks of your companions? And so veil herself, so she's making a reference that she wants to go and be with him, but she's also making it clear that she's not veiling herself like a prostitute. She wants to hang out with the guy she loves, but she's making it clear this is not going to be a sexual thing. And it looks like the slide cut off the very last verse with the chorus saying, "We will exult and rejoice in you." Or, I'm sorry, never mind, this is not cut off. I'm looking at the wrong page on my notes here. So anyways, and shepherd is kind of another term of endearment, so that's kind of where the shepherd idea comes from, that there might be a love triangle, but it seems more like she's just calling Solomon a shepherd, and she wants to be under his care as one of his flock, and to lie down at noon, that's when the hottest part of the day is. That's when the sheep get to bed down and everyone sort of rests. And so that's kind of what she just wants. So that's kind of where this whole love triangle idea came from. But I've studied the text. I don't really think it's there. So the book opens with the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. This means the greatest song of Solomon. So why might a love song be considered the greatest of the 1,005 songs composed by him? Yes, Jim.
Maybe because it's a personal thing that it's not just talking about the life of his life. Interacting might be more important because it's his life.
So Jim's point is that it's a very personal song because it's about his life, this woman that he loves, that he marries, and so it's a very personal one. And it's also, I would say, it's about a subject that the Bible doesn't really get into deeply. It talks about relationships, but it doesn't really talk about the power of love and how to deal with it. Oh, sorry. So what do the bride's first lines of the song tell us about her character? Well, she's a young woman. She's very much in love, right? She wants to be with the man she loves. So that's kind of what we can draw there. She definitely has sexual desire for him, of course, and that's kind of what the song is about, like controlling sexual desire when it is appropriate. And so what do her words tell us about the groom's character? She thinks he's wonderful and has full confidence in him. Well, she calls him a shepherd, and so she believes he's attentive with his flock. He takes care of them. He makes them lie down at noon, and she wants to be one of his flock, right? She wants to be under his care and his protection because she sees him as a strong and honorable man, right? So these are sort of the characteristics that a young woman should look for in a husband, right? Someone that's, he's got flocks, so he's not poor. He's got a way to support her. He has, he cares for his flock. He he's strong, he's courageous because he's going out into the wilds, right? So these are all sort of masculine traits that we should encourage young women to look for in their husbands. So how does our images of ourselves affect our relationship with others? So as you see here, she is self-conscious of the fact that she's been tanned heavily by being out in the sun, and she's not fair like the daughters of Jerusalem. And so
your perception is your reality. You're wrong.
yeah, your perception is your reality, and you're often wrong about the perception of yourself, and it can hold you back from doing things, Justin.
I think this is something that's really important in our time. You really see it strongly in this culture, that if people feel they are not worthy, they don't step out and take the responsibility for their own actions or other people's actions. They don't feel like if there's danger coming, they have to be the ones to protect. If they don't feel they're worthy, every relationship is affected by that. And in this culture, worth is connected to images. I think in the aristocracy throughout history, worth is connected to the physical appearance. She's not maybe in the aristocracy herself, a stronger poor person, but she clearly sees herself as not like the prostitutes or harlots that offer their services to the workers in the field. She sees herself as something better. Even though she's poor, she sees herself as something better. And yet the image doesn't go with it. So she's talking about, I am something better in spite of how I look. That's a very powerful image for us to remember for the people we counsel and consult with and help in our time.
Okay. So Dan's point, if I can condense this, is that that how we see ourselves, we can see ourselves as not worthy of things, and this is a big problem in our culture. That when we have this disconnect between our how we feel that we're worthy and how the world sees us, and especially in the ancient culture, like physical appearance was connected with worthiness, and even with the aristocracy, even the aristocracy we have today with our movie stars and all that, and that young girls, they look at them and they look at themselves and think that they're not beautiful enough, right? And that's a hard thing. But there's something to keep in mind about the bride, that even though she doesn't think she's beautiful enough, she has self-worth because she's not a prostitute. She's not going to demean herself that way. And that's something important that you'll see, that the bride sees herself as the equal in the relationship with Solomon. So she might be a peasant girl, and she might be in a culture where women were not seen as equals to men, but she sees herself as an equal in their relationship. And that is one of the points of this poem. That is something that's very, very radical, I would say, for a poem that was written 3,000 years ago. And is not at all what you find in other love poetry of the time. So, how is love and romance portrayed in media today? Chet is shaking his head because it's portrayed very badly. Yeah. I think we can all agree on that. There's definitely unrealistic. Unrealistic. Okay, Dan?
I think the entertainment media throughout history, I mean, we're not the first culture to have entertainment media. That's where idolatry came from. The ancient world was entertainment. And the entertainment media has always projected the effect of love and romance in the moment, right now, under the sun, Ecclesiastes. It's the pleasure inspired and led and empowered, and we're doing what we're doing to please the God who is waiting for us to come into the afterlife. Well, that's a very different view of love and romance. If love and romance is preparing us to meet God, to leave a legacy of people who will meet God.
All right. So Dan's point is that entertainment media throughout the thousands and thousands of years that we've had entertainment media, it's not something new that just came about 100 years ago with Hollywood. It's been around in Roman times, Greek times, Egyptian times, Babylonian times, caveman times, right? We were always entertaining ourselves. And love stories in those societies are usually focused on the immediate, on the passion of the moment, not on thinking of what's to come in the future, not even just heaven where we're going to go, but where does the relationship go? And there's something interesting about Song of Solomon, is that in most love stories, like the culmination is the union of the two, right? Maybe it's a marriage at the end of it, maybe it's just, them having sex, but the marriage actually comes in the middle of the poem. It comes in chapter 4 of 8 chapters. And so half of this poem is about them after they're married. So that is something to keep in mind, because it's the entire thing. It's not just the moment, right, that we need to be focused on with love. It's, thinking about where is this going, what are the proper bounds, because God ordained for when this is appropriate. All right. So, the beauty of love. So now we have King Solomon. If you do not know, a most beautiful among women, follow in the tracks of the flock and pasture your young goats beside the shepherd's tents. So this is, in the last verse, she was asking where she could find him. I know we just spent like 10 minutes talking about other stuff, but now he's basically telling the chorus to tell the bride where she can find him. And I compare you, my love, to a mare among Pharaoh's chariots. Ooh, that's an interesting one, right? I mean, today they call a woman like she looks like a horse and she's going to be insulted. But a Pharaoh's mare is the best of the best of horses. This is a beautiful, majestic creature. And that is how Solomon sees his bride. So she sees herself as ugly. He sees herself as majestic. All right. Your cheeks are lovely with ornaments, your neck with strings of jewels. So she does have some amount of jewelry. So she's not very poor, but she definitely had to work in the field by her brothers. I mean, her family did own land, so that doesn't indicate they had some amount of wealth. But she's not in the city. Seems to be in the aristocracy. So she does seem like an outsider. Yes, Dan?
Is his verse 10 what he sees that is not there physically?
Maybe. It does seem like he's seeing her with like earrings and jewelry, and that it might be the fact that she's adorned like that made her think of the mare, because horses in ancient times were often adorned, especially like the Pharaoh's chariot is going to be adorned with jewels and stuff to look beautiful. And it may have been why he had that analogy in the previous verse. But either way, it does say in the next verse, we will make for you ornaments of gold studded with silver. So the women of Jerusalem are like, we want to make you even more beautiful, and we're going to make jewelry for you to support you. So it is possible that maybe she didn't have anything, and he was just imagining her with it.
Her skin was that beautiful.
Yeah. So while the king was on his couch, my nard gave forth its fragrance. So nard is that really aromatic oil that they use. This is what was anointed on Jesus, I believe, by the woman. And so the king is on his couch. So he's at his feasting hall. We don't think of going to a feast as being on a couch, but in ancient days, when you were the king, you sort of lounged on a couch at your feast. So my beloved is to me a sachet of myrrh that lies between my breasts. So a sachet, if anyone knows that, it's like a little bundle that you infuse with perfume, and then you wear it so you smell nice. My beloved is to me a cluster of henna blossoms in the vineyards of En-Gedi. En-Gedi is an oasis near the Dead Sea. So it is like the one place where there's any greenery by the Dead Sea. So it's a very, it's a very enticing place to be if you're around the Dead Sea, right? Behold, you are beautiful, my love. Behold, you are beautiful. Your eyes are doves. And doves, were kind of represented tenderness and purity. So he's seeing her as a very tender and pure. And I want you to think they're like at a feasting hall. So there's other people around, they're at dinner, right? He's seeing her come in with her new jewelry and seeing, her dressed up, right? She's, behold, you are beautiful, my beloved, truly delightful. Our couch is green, the beams of our house are cedar, our rafters are pine. So they're kind of like, they're in their own little world, right? So she's on the couch with him, they're eating and drinking, and she's imagining they're like out in the wilderness in the garden, right? There's a lot of garden imagery, like take back to the purity when Adam and Eve were just in the garden, and they had this pure, unsoiled, unfallen relationship, right, before the fall when everything was pure and good, right? So it's kind of evoking that they're in their own little world of romance here. So in what ways do the brides and grooms' compliments for each other express their love? It's what you see in that person. Yeah. It's more an inner beauty versus an outer beauty where, they see each other, better than the person sees themselves, as we see with the bride. Love, I think anyone who's ever been in love would understand what's going on here, yeah. So what can we learn about a growing relationship from this portion of the Song of Songs? So
I'm going to say that praise is a vital part of growing any relationship, but especially a husband and wife. The power of that relationship creates a new being, a new eternal spiritual being whose emotional, mental, and spiritual health is shaped by the praise they give for each other. Praise in a relationship is absolutely vital.
So Dan's point is praise in a relationship is absolutely vital to grow this new relationship and help to forge it into one flesh, right? I mean, they're still in their courtship, so they're like on a date right now, but they're praising each other. It's both ways, right? It's not a one-sided relationship. They're both complimenting the other. They both see the other one as beautiful, right? And they're both expressing that to each other. And that is absolutely vital in a relationship. And a relationship needs to be that two-way street. A one-sided relationship is going to end badly.
I'll also just add that continues.
Yeah, and that doesn't end with just up in the courtship. You need to keep doing the praise through the relationship. I know I'm the single guy here lecturing married couples, but
Including 50 years later.
yes, 50 years later, you still need to be praising your wife or your husband. Yes, and like I said, I think that's one of the point of the book, why it is the marriage is in the middle, and then we have stuff after the marriage. So, the banner of love. I am a rose of Sharon, a lily of the valleys. I think we all recognize that. So the rose of Sharon is thought to be a bulb flower like a crocus or an aphidel or a narcissus. So it's kind of a wild flower, and it's similar to probably the lily of the valley, which is probably another wild flower. And he answers, as a lily among brambles, so is my love among the young women. So remember, she thought herself as not as beautiful as the daughters of Jerusalem. And he's telling her, no, you're more beautiful than the daughters of Jerusalem. And as you can see from the next verse, she obviously is very happy with this. As an apple tree among the trees of the forest, so is my beloved among the young men. With great delight I sat in his shadow, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. So both, I think there's a wordplay here. They're kissing, I'll tell you that, they're kissing in this scene. And so she's finding that sweet, but she's also finding his words sweet, right? You know, what he just said to her, I'm sure that thrilled the young woman, right? And so as he brought me to the banquet house, and his banner over me was love. So the banqueting house, this is the dining house in the palace. It's literally wine house, and it's the only place actually in the Bible where that word is found. And his banner over me was love. So they're public in the fact that they're in a relationship. This is not a secret tryst. This is not the king sneaking his peasant mistress into the palace. This is open, right? Their courtship is for the public to see, because you know what? Marriage is a public institution. It's not something that's to be hidden. That's why weddings are big occasions where everyone gets together. That's why people put announcements in the newspaper that they're getting married, right? This is a public statement that we're coming together, that we're only for each other, right? So, sustain me with raisins, refresh me with apples, for I am sick with love. I think the ESV translates this part a little badly. I think it's a literally in the Hebrew, sick with love, but a better translation would be faint with love. So I think something more appropriate. So don't think she's like, I'm going to throw up. She's just sort of dizzy and heady with everything that's going on. They're eating raisins. Raisins were very big, sweet delicacy in this time. You know, grapes don't last long, but you turn them into raisins, they still taste good, and you can keep them a long time. So his left hand is under my head, and his right hand embraces me. So this is a euphemism that can mean sex, but it also means that they are getting very, very physical. They are kissing. He's probably touching her in inappropriate ways. And as you see in the next verse, she says, I abjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or the doves, that should be doves, not does, of the field, that you not stir up awaken love until it pleases. So basically, the couple got very, very physical, and she had to put the brakes up. She's saying, no, this is going too far. You know, we're not married yet. I have to be like the gazelle, which is a very sort of timid and coy creature that prances off the moment you see it, or like the dove that takes flight, when the hunter comes, right? So, and she's also telling young women, do not stir up or awaken love until it pleases. She's saying, do not rush into physical love. It's very easy to get swept up. It's very easy when the guy is promising you that he loves you and that you're the only one for him, and that, what's the harm in us, going early, right? This is, I think, a message that is very important for the young women of our church to hear, and the young men too, that they need to be chaste in their courtship, that they need to resist that. They need to be like the coy gazelle and the timid dove, right? And this phrase here, I abjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, not to stir or awaken love until it pleases, this is repeated 3 more times in this poem, and is one of the central themes. We'll see it again in 3:5. And in 8:4, and there's also a variation of it in 5:8. So in this verse, the bride tells her attendants that romantic love has great power, and they should neither stimulate it nor encourage it unless it could be fulfilled in the proper context of marriage. So how would you go about communicating the same message to the youth of today?
Subversely, that's like, what are you trying to say? Then they're not going to be open. If you treat them like an adult and you talk to them, with care and information, they get it.
Okay, so Kathy, who has taught high school, so she's interacted with a lot of teenage girls and teenage boys, so her advice is not to try to be circumspect, but to be honest with them. Be blunt and tell them, these are the consequences, these are the rewards, treat them with respect as you do it and with care, so that they can understand the message and understand that there's something, great about waiting. So here's a question for y'all to think about, though. Am I heeding the young woman's advice on self-discipline, love, and intimacy? I'm not sure there's too many single people in this audience chamber here besides myself. But this is something for married people, too, but also for single people. Just, keep that in mind as you go through your day. So, the call of love. The voice of my beloved, behold, he comes leaping over the mountains bounding over the hills. So we've had a scene change. So she put the brakes on their date, and now she seems to be back at home. And so she has this sort of imagery of her beloved being so eager to see her. He's just literally leaping over mountains and bounding hills. I think we can kind of understand the thing, what she's trying to get here. My beloved is like a gazelle or a young stag. Behold, there he stands behind our wall, gazing through the windows, looking through the lattices. So he's got to her house, and he's trying to get a glimpse of her inside the windows, as he's so eager to see her again. And she's probably inside getting herself ready. I think every guy who's gone on a date understands that you gotta wait for your date to get ready, right? She needs to be beautiful for you, right? My beloved speaks and says to me, arise, my love, my beautiful one, and come away. And so arise, my love is going to repeat in verse 13, and it kind of brackets this section. Right? For behold, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone. So it's spring, right? The flowers are blooming, the trees are green, everything feels new and, wonderful. I mean, spring is, even today, sort of a, symbolism for love, right? So he's wanting to take her out. So the flowers appear on the earth, the time of singing has come, and the voice of the turtle dove is heard in our land. So sweet smells abound, beautiful songs are in the air, and they're going out into, the forest to have a date, right? The fig tree ripens its figs, and the vines are in blossom. They give forth fragrance. Arise, my love, my beautiful one, and come away. O my dove, in the clefts of the rock, in the crannies of the cliff, let me see your face. Let me hear your voice, for your voice is sweet and your face is lovely. So he's trying to get her to come out on a date with him, and she seems a little shy here. That's why he's asking to see her face. And then we have this interesting voice here. Catch the foxes for us, the little foxes that spoil the vineyards, for our vineyards are in blossom. So now, before the vineyard represented her body, but now it seems to represent their love. And the little foxes are thought to be other suitors that might be after her, right? Because maybe she doesn't see herself as beautiful, but clearly other men do, including the king. And he's worried that, someone's going to try to ruin their relationship. Or this could be gossip, right? There could be, young women, gossiping and who are jealous, right? And are trying to sabotage their relationship. So this is just, asking people to stop, people from trying to destroy their growing relationship, right? So, separate for some time, the groom can't help but steal a glimpse of her through the window. What effect does separation have on your relationships?
It either makes it stronger or weaker.
It can make it stronger or it can make it weaker. If the relationship is not strong and there's separation, that's things can go wrong, right? It's a mindset when you're away from your beloved that you have to keep focus on the relationship. Right. Dan.
I think there's two different dimensions of the relationship that are moving in opposite directions when the couple are separate. One is the dimension of trust, the degree to which they know each other and they know what each other's doing and they know what each other's experiencing. And they know where that other person's going to go. The longer they're apart, the trust has to diminish because they don't know as much about each other anymore. But the other, at the first, is that yearning, the yearning to be together. That yearning grows the longer that they're apart. Those two factors, trust and yearning, have a up and down again effect on the relationship. So he's wanting to take advantage of the positive part of that, the going up part, to prevent the later going down part. I think separation has a strain on the relationship, and there is only so much separation that is healthy for the relationship. You see that in 1 Corinthians 7, where he talks to a married couple. And Paul there says, don't be away from each other too long.
Okay. So Dan's point is that there's sort of two dimensions at play when a couple is separate. One is their trust for each other, which is going to slowly dwindle as the time goes on. And then there's the yearning for each other that's going to slowly increase. And there's sort of a point where they're kind of both, at their peak and before things can go bad in a relationship. And the beloved, he's wanting to see her again before too much erosion happens, and while the yearning is still strong, because too much time apart, and it's different for every relationship, but it can cause great harm in the end. And he also brought up 1 Corinthians chapter 7, where Paul advises married couples not to abstain from sex for too long a period of time and only when both parties agree to it, and for the purpose of prayer. Yes. So what effect does a break in communication with God have on your relationship with Him? So we're going to do a little allegory, I guess. I know if I don't keep up with my prayers, I start to feel that separation, right? And you realize like, oh no, I haven't been praying as much as I should, and I don't know, you do kind of feel that separation. It's not good. All right, well, we're running out of time. So, yes, Betty?
There used to be a popular teacher that said, if you don't feel close to God, guess who moved?
Yeah, so Betty said there's a teacher said, if you don't feel close to God, guess who moved? And it's God doesn't move away from us, yes. We're going to skip this question because we are kind of running out of time. So, my beloved is mine, and I am his. He grazes among the lilies. Grazes among the lilies is a euphemism for kissing. Until the day breeze and shadows flee, turn, my beloved, be like a gazelle or a young stag on cleft mountains. So until the day breathes and shadows flee, this is evening, so the wind comes in and blows away the hot air for the day, and shadows getting long. So he's asking her to come to him, and then now we switch scenes in chapter 3 that she goes to bed. I'm on my bed by night. I sought him whom my soul loves. I sought him but found him not. She's having a nightmare. So she's asleep, and she's so afraid of losing him. I think anyone who's in a relationship can understand this fear. And she's having a nightmare that she can't find him. So I will rise now and go about the city, in the streets and in the squares. I will seek him whom my soul loves. I sought him, but found him not. And soul loves is not just romantic love. It's sort of an all-encompassing love that she has for him. So it's more than just romance. She cares for him. She's, if you understand what I'm saying, it's like agape love with romantic love mixed in with it, right? So the watchmen found me as they went about in the city. Have you seen him whom my soul loves? Scarcely had I passed them when I found him whom my soul loves. I held him and would not let him go until I had brought him into my mother's house and into the chamber of her who conceived me. That line there is an interesting one. There might have been an ancient Israelite wedding practice where weddings were consummated in your parents' bed. Yeah, it's kind of a weird one, but that seems to be where she wants to take him in the dream. So she is having a dream, and the dream is now turning sexual now that she's found him. And then she awakens, right? I abjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or the does, man, of the field. Maybe that is supposed to be does, like a female deer. But that you not stir up or awaken love until it pleases. So she woke up, she had a nightmare, it turned into a sex dream, and then she woke up and was like, oh, don't, get focused on that stuff. You're going to have these sort of dreams, but don't let them drive you to actually do it before marriage. So in what ways do a man and woman who are married belong to each other?
It's supposed to be in all ways.
It's supposed
That's time and growth.
It's supposed to be in all ways, but it takes time and growth for that to happen. And little foxes can ruin that if you're not careful.
You need to be focused on your marriage.
Yes, you need to be focused on your marriage. Yeah. It should be a priority in your life, all right? Even when you've been married for 50 years, right, Dan? That's right, yeah.
Amen.
All right, so this is just This is just the end of it in brief. So sometime after waking from her dream, the young woman described Solomon's wedding procession. The noble entourage includes Solomon's carriage and royal escort of 60 armed soldiers. The daughters of Jerusalem were called out to see Solomon wearing the wedding crown given to him by his mother Bathsheba. That's in verses 3:6 through 11. The king responded by praising his bride, using comparisons from both nature and architecture. He called on her to come with him because she had stolen his heart, adding that she was like a garden, a spring, and a fountain. So garden, springs, and fountains are euphemisms for female sexuality. Male euphemisms in the Bible are like plowing fields and sowing seeds, right? So the maidens answered his request by inviting him to share their love, and the singing of the song closes with the groom expressing his enjoyment of his bride's love. So this does seem to be a consummation of the marriage there in verses 4:16 through 5:1. There's a lot of very sexual euphemisms used in this passage because they are now married and they're now free to act on those desires that before they had to be coy and chaste. Now they no longer have to be. And that is where we're going to end today. But just a thought question that you should focus in mind is, how great is your desire to be pure in love, right? For us single people, for us married people, that's just something we should keep in mind, right? So next week, read Songs chapter 5, verse 2 through the end of the book, and think about some of the characteristics of the relationship between the bride and groom and how you can apply them to your own relationships, whether those be friendship, courtship, or marriages. And let's end with a prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity that we got to study your word and to learn more about the mysteries of love and the power that it can have over us and how we should be chaste in our relationships until the proper time, which is in the union of marriage, Lord. And just be with us as we go out into the world and help us to be lights, Lord. And in your name, amen.